Welcome, Divine Hearts, and thank you for joining us again. This week, I have a very wonderful guest. She is Merissa Indigo, and Merissa is many things. She is a light keeper, she is a shaman, and this is my favourite title for her. She is a Cacaoista, and we're going to come and speak a bit more about her connection with the sacred cacao later and how she creates chocolates a bit later. But first, we're going to be talking about how she retrieves ancient wisdom and knowledge and brings this back to be utilised by us today in our day-to-day lives. And she shares wisdoms and knowledge from the yoga practices and also from the Ayurveda practices. And I was just watching a really lovely video recently from Merissa where she's talking and sharing the techniques of the pranayama breath and how simple this is and how powerful it is to assist us to come back to center again. So she is a very beautiful being, utilizing these ancient wisdoms and technologies and bringing her own flavor to everything that she shares with us as a humanity at this time. So thank you so much, Merissa, for joining us and being such an open and willing heart to share your journey with us.
Thank you so much, Lois. I'm so excited to be here for our time today. And hello, everyone. Aloha.
So I was really curious. I know that you were born and raised in one of my favorite places in the planet, in Hawaii. And I also know that your connection with nature is really potent and powerful and has grown and evolved as you have. You've expanded and you've connected with the angelic realms and the elemental realms. And I wanted to ask you, do you remember this happening in Hawaii, being as the frequencies are so high importance there? Or was this something that evolved later for you?
Well, it's an interesting story, as they often are, right? So I want to share really quickly, just for factual, just to be on point with that. So I was conceived on the Big Island of Hawaii, and then my parents left the island, and I was actually born on the mainland in Thousand Oaks, California, but then grew up for about 2 weeks old to almost 12 years old on the Big Island. So it's an interesting thing. I've had this interesting grid keeper thing, I guess, with, Lemuria, both on the island and then at that portion of the West Coast on the mainland. But to be honest, since a young child, I had a really visceral connection with the elemental realms, playing in the jungles, the beautiful, vibrant green colors. And the indigenous people there have such a strong connection to their heritage that it's a very palpable existence living on the islands. You feel the spirits, you feel the gods and goddesses, the elementals, the fae, all around, because, what's different about this location compared to many is that the lore is kept alive. The traditions are very much alive and a part of the modern day for the people here on the island. So when you come on the island, you agree, to also uphold and to be to enjoy and appreciate and take part in these codes. Yeah, so it was very, very real to be with the these vines. You're climbing trees and everything's covered with vines, and it's so lush that everything is soft. Even if you were to fall, playing in the jungle, it's really interesting. But then in contrast to that, you've got the elemental activity of Madame Pele with her fire, and that alchemy, that phoenix energy where Mother Nature is still the dominating energy, and we have a lot of honor and respect for her. So it's it was very contrasting, which of course, right? Don't we have that in so many ways in our life? But I grew up in the jungles and off grid, these beautiful places, but then we were really close to the tidal pools, which were all lava rock. So you're running around on your bare, in your bare feet, really connecting in with the earth, but there's very, very sharp lava also, and then the reefs. And so you have everything, they say it's the island of ice and fire, because you've got that dormant volcano, which is now the beautiful snow-covered, sacred Mauna Kea. And then you've got Madame Pele. So you've got everything in between. So yeah, it was a very interesting, very wonderful Lemurian upbringing as far as the elementals and nature. That was my sustenance. That was what fed my soul and my light body, in order to be embodied, because it was very challenging, to be in the physical human form, right?
Yes. So it gave you a really beautiful foundation, in a sense, to be able to be like a scaffolding for you to get you prepared for what was to come and the changes
Absolutely.
that was to come.
100%.
So you were, as a child, were you, so you felt those connections. Did you open up to the angelic realms and the fairy realms then, or did that come later through other experiences?
Yes, that was in my childhood too. I had an innate, this is where I think maybe more of the nature shaman kind of comes in, of knowing that the messages of the divine come all around us through nature. In the breeze, there are messages, right? In the way that the sticks and the leaves fall on the forest floor, there are messages, the animals that come into our experience, the sounds that we hear, the breeze going through the palm fronds, clicking, it's like a Morse code. Like, there's just so much encodement in the experience when we're viscerally, in a a sensory connection. So yes, I would say the elementals and the fae very much. And then the angelic realm is very interesting how it was present. A lot of really different interesting ways. Like, family members would give me like angel, figurines and fairy figurines and statues. And there are actually a number of experiences in my childhood, because I did have quite a tumultuous human experience in the nuclear family, where there would be, more intense things going on that were challenging. And I would hear the angels, just say, just don't listen, or just, it was very interesting. There was a lot of in the background, and I never knew or saw, I never really physically saw, but it was a clairsentient, knowing that there were these beings here to support us, which definitely made it possible to get through some of these other things.
Absolutely, that's so beautiful. I know that physically you've mentioned it there, that you went through many sorts of challenging experiences when you were still a child, and in a sense, how that then assisted you to start to retrieve this ancient wisdom and knowledge, maybe from the yogic practices and then following through with the Ayurvedic. Would you be comfortable in sharing your experiences then, what occurred to you as a child, to bring you to that?
Yes, absolutely. So I had several really interesting and like bizarre autoimmune disorders. And I also had a lot of asthma as a young child too. So it's very interesting later on, when we start to put the pieces together, these metaphysical, attributes that are linked. And we see this in Ayurvedic medicine and shamanic, many different traditional shamanic cultures, and Chinese medicine too, that there are these frequency bands in the body where the organs are, and that there's different emotional, correspondences to these organs. So if we're having a lot of fear, it could be stored somewhere. So my first thing was lungs, where we have fear and grief. And I was so empathic that I didn't know not to take on everything around me and try to alchemize it myself. And then also being a projector in human design, when you don't know these things, your consciousness can pierce any topic. So anything you're focusing on, and you're just blown open. So anything you're focusing on, you merge with it. And then it can be very confusing from an identity standpoint as well, of like, oh, was that my idea? Or, it's interesting, these things. So the first experience was was lungs with serious asthma and respiratory things. I tried to leave quite a few times, to be honest, in childhood, until I finally had that catalytic experience. And so it was lungs with respiratory things. The most serious one was a kidney disorder. And okay, again, then we're storing fear, in the kidneys. And then, and that was a long process with that. But what happened with these near-death experiences was a visitation, because I had, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time with words still with the retrograde and all this stuff, but I had contraindications with the medications that I was given, these pharmaceuticals that I was given. And so those complications caused a near-death experience. And when I was in the hospital, I had one of my most visceral visitations of higher self, soul, kind of almost a future aspect. angelic aspects showing me how dis-ease was created and is created. And it's all about frequency. It's all about what are we holding? Where are our emotions? And emotions are supposed to be energy in motion. We're supposed to feel, but we're not supposed to hold on and clamp down and lock it and load it, into the tissues. So this creates the density and the dis-ease. So I was shown how all dis-ease is coming from somehow a misalignment with our most divine frequency, or as I call my projects, divine DNA blueprint. We're a little bit off track. And there's just different modalities we can do and inner seeing, to see where we need to do a few little adjustments. But what was interesting about that experience was I was shown how I created the maladies within my own body by storing these emotions, because I was becoming quite toxic myself emotionally. I was very negative. So they were showing me how, okay, there's a branch, there's a crossroads in the path. You could go one way, which is where I was going, which was pretty negative and self-destructive and those kinds of frequencies, or I could go the other way of choosing wellness and how this is how, you can achieve that. And that if I went that way, I would be taking on my mission of why I came, which was to show people how powerful they truly are with the mind, body, spirit connection. If they love themselves enough and they believe that they're worthy of being here, there's nothing that could prevent their full radiance, and something I've been waiting to share my whole life. So it's very exciting now in these times, and we have it's so amazing how our experiences and these wisdom systems, start to collapse in. So this was an activation I received, at about 9 years old in a hospital on Oahu, because I had to go to a different hospital, a children's hospital, for the specialty treatment that I received. But the man who worked on me was an Indian heart specialist from India. And it was like him being there in my presence activated all these different lives, different incarnations perhaps, or just codes, in my Akash of being a medicine person and being a Vedic priest and priestess and all this stuff. And then you fast forward 10 years and I started studying Ayurvedic medicine and the whole Vedic, all of those codes. And the primordial cause of dis-ease is forgetting one's true nature as spirit. So, we can start to forget, which is part of the amnesia of the incarnational process, that we are a spiritual being having a human experience, right? And then we over-identify with just the human aspect and that density. And then it can start to feel really dense, and then we can, from there, maybe, create some things. But on a shamanic path, a lot of us will have these really serious initiations with the body and with our health, because that's the final. I just did a video about this, sharing my health journey. The final frontier is the body, because that's the house of the soul, of the spirit, of the Shekinah, the magic, the breath. And sometimes we need a serious wake-up call, right? Near-death experiences to start to see, oh gosh, I was creating erroneously, or maybe I wasn't, aligning with my highest. Well, what is my highest then, Yeah. So thank you for asking. There's very important codes for people right now to know the power of the mind, body, spirit connection and embracing their truth,
Yes. And it's so beautiful that you were ready. In a sense, age isn't relevant, but being such a young being at that time, to be able to receive guidance from your higher self to show you everything. This is how it works. This is what you've been creating, and sort of giving you back your own power to take responsibility for how you are creating, and also to get to see these synchronicities and possibly to see your potential as well, and your gifts and talents and the things that you could utilize in your near future, that you were ready to see that at such a young age. I think that's so, so beautiful. And for many, I'm sure that people might remember dreams or experiences. They might have put those aside, but that it's really, really important to take note, because for me, I feel it's like we're in such an innocent time at that time too, so we are open to receiving it before we may start to close down or move more into fear. But you chose to open up and move in another way. So that's beautiful.
Thank you.
I want to sidetrack a little bit, because I want to find out a bit more about how you began on your journey with the cacao.
Sure.
And then we'll come back then to your yoga and Ayurveda and other things. But tell us a little bit about how that occurred, because again, you are retrieving ancient wisdom and knowledge, but you're bringing it through in such a beautiful way and a delicious way. I wish I lived in America to be able to purchase some of your lovely chocolates.
Thank you. Yeah, so a lot of the Divine Mother codes started to activate when I became a mother. So my daughter was 6 months old, and we decided as a family that we would like to move to the island of Dominica in the West Indies and set up a healing retreat center there. So this was in 2009. So we decided to move. We left California and go to a new place. And one day, I mean, it was all so amazing how it happened. I had purchased a lot of different books about like eating in the light and, raw food movement, like really getting into more of the living light foods. I was doing a lot more esoteric practices, the sun gazing, like a lot of different things, starting to learn about the high levels of prana and life force energy. And so I'm reading these books, David Wolfe, his beautiful book, like Raw Beauty, I think, or something like that, Eating for Beauty. And then coincidentally, I start reading about cacao. And then a few days later, there's these really sweet little local boys, and they brought us some gifts, and it was cocoa tea, which is in their version of like a hot chocolate. And it's actually, they take the cacao and they actually, once they've processed it, they actually roll it into like a little log, and you're using almost like a nutmeg grater, like those cute little graters, and you're grating this chunk, of, it's almost like a baker's chocolate and then making they call it cocoa tea, which is your hot chocolate. And I was so excited about that. And then they one day said, oh, would you like to see the cocoa trees in the jungle? And I was like, yes, like that sounds amazing, And so the little boys take me, and we ended up picking I don't know, bags of cacao pods. And it was so amazing to be in the jungle, and I had no idea that cacao was even growing there. So it was just so interesting, as I was learning about cacao, learning about it as the most incredible chemistry. I mean, it's pages and pages and pages of amino acids. It affects the same parts of the brain as like deep meditation, energy work would, also plant medicines, but on a very, very like a total microdose kind of amount. So it's food to help us to create DMT and open the heart and reveal dreams that you have held so deeply within that you forget. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I've held that my whole life. And what's really weird about it is that, years before, in the year 2000, I think the movie Chocolat came out. And that was so interesting because I remember watching that movie. I was 13, I think, and thinking, wow, this lady is like a light worker with chocolate. Like she's like touching people with chocolate and bringing color into their life and helping to free them of the shackles around their heart. I thought that was really interesting. And she was kind of a nomad, and it was just her and her little girl. She's a single mom. Really weird, how we have these codes come and we have no idea. We just know that it touches our heart and it speaks to us, but we don't yet know how. And that wasn't even my conscious intention when I came back to the States and was offered to use David Wolfe's cacao. This was in 2012. I started playing around, like, I want to make my own chocolate. And then it was like these codes just started coming through. And now, even now, when I make chocolate, I have this huge golden lion, my beautiful Lyran guardian, like an Aslan lion that I make the chocolate with. And I have some of your Andara pieces with me and listen to music. And every time it's such an interesting thing because it's a total cosmic yet Gaian. I mean, that's where you start to see the 5D, 7D Gaia, that Terra Nova star being. Gaia through the cacao. And we start to see how all of these offerings and all these alternative medicines, holistic, indigenous sacred medicines that she has gifted us are just so incredible. And a lot of them are extraterrestrial. So yeah, I mean, fascinating stuff. And I just started playing. And the first thing, so I'm a foodie. I grew up, my parents had a pizzeria a French and Italian fusion restaurant on the Big Island. So I grew up, they're making pizzas and pesto buns and beautiful things. And I'm a Taurus. My son is a Taurus. So I love food. I love sharing love through food. I see that it is very activating for people, very activating to share beautiful food and to challenge yourself as an artist too. And so first it was like, oh, I want to make all the things that existed when I was little that were really full of a lot of processed stuff and recreate them. So it was a challenge for me. I was challenging myself, like, can I recreate the texture and the experience, but with all superfood ingredients and like no soy, minimal sugar, all of this, to be super cognizant. Because what was happening when I was working at this health food store, which is how I met the people who were running David Wolf's Longevity Warehouse, was I would work on the cashier, ringing people up and seeing how many people couldn't have anything because it had soy or corn or a processed sugar, So I was like, something should exist for people that is for everyone, that is truly for everyone. And so I've studied, integrative nutrition just for my own health and with the Ayurvedic. I mean, the whole holistic kind of nutrition, looking at nutrition that way for detox and Ascension. So that's what I've created. And so it started with challenging myself, like things that already exist. How can I make a healthy version that you almost can't tell the difference? And then I started to realize that these codes were coming, like the Mayans came and gave me the Mayan heart, which was a variation of when you talk about like Mexican hot chocolate, it's like a tradition, with the beautiful cinnamon and the peppers, like dried peppers and stuff. And then the Vedic chai came, which was the codes of the Vedic coming through, because I started to see how, and learning this from a chemistry perspective, this is where my alchemist comes out. I love to make essential oil blends and anything where I can make stuff, that's like enjoying our human experience of the senses. What does it smell like? What does it taste like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? That's that portal engineer coming in for however we can digest it. And I realized, studying the chemistry, like, okay, so cacao itself in its unprocessed form is a carrier of things very deep into the blood-brain barrier, into these different, into the tissues. So if you start to partner, like when you look at nutrition and the best way to assimilate supplements and nutrients and like minerals and stuff, they have to piggyback on things. They need maybe like a fat molecule, to ride in to actually get absorbed. So these formulas were coming in, like the Vedic one, which has a lot of curcumin, which is turmeric for inflammation, and and so so it's just it's part of I think another time too of maybe being a medicine person with the alchemy, that where everything is alchemy, how we connect, how we eat, all these things, it's all alchemy. And I find that everything that I love to share that. Part of the human experience, like, let's celebrate it. Like, how fun can it be? And also how clean and how high of a frequency can we make it, and keep up leveling, Yeah. So that's the chocolate.
And by today, these chocolates are being sent all over America.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so wonderful. That's
it's really neat.
I also love, they're not dainty, they're bigger pieces, which is what you want, a really big piece to put in your mouth, which is lovely.
And I use essential oils and stuff to flavor. So it's either, spices or dried fruits or essential oils. So everything is really pure and just celebrating this magic that we have from the earth. It's very simple, so very grounded. And then yet the cacao itself expands our hearts and our crowns to really unravel. I mean, it's really a revelation code to see, like, what have I not been allowing myself to see that would really light me up? Maybe a dormant purpose of mine. And it's brought through dance for me. Toning is coming through. I'm finally getting brave. I have like my own version of a light language, which is actually voices of Gaia and the elementals that's coming through. So it kind of helps us get out of our own way. It's almost like a plant medicine journey, but you don't have to take a more of a hardcore, like, hallucinogenic substance or something, to open. And that's kind of part of it, is we can be activated by anything. You just need a particle, really your imagination, Yeah.
And it's such an exciting time too, because we don't stay in one place. You're continually evolving. And I love, especially with your videos on YouTube, how that's there's new things coming through all the time with you, and you're sharing new things. There was a sharing about dragons. There was another sharing about the angelics, the frequencies. So there's because we are continually evolving, we're reaching new frequencies from inside, and it's just a beautiful journey seeing this unfoldment and these varying aspects of you and of us coming through to be shared, which is really beautiful.
Thank you.
And you have created a mystery school also. And so alongside your chocolates, you have this mystery school, and you also have this outlet, this YouTube channel, which is a creative outlet in a sense, because you're able to share many aspects of yourself there, and then the teachings in your mystery school. Talk a little bit about your mystery school, how that came about, what the intention is, and what people can find there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's exciting. So I wanted to share this temple image today because, what started to come through really strongly, particularly last year, was this code of ministry. Each of us, what is our ministry? Meaning, what is our code? What is our calling? What is our mission? And how do we, show up as that? So I actually founded, so it's Divine DNA Blueprint Mystery School, and it's a modern mystery school online. I founded it in 2019, and the very first course was a Mary Magdalene course to support, as the Divine Feminine is awakening, to support us unraveling more of the distortion codes from the Divine Feminine. So everything I share is my own journey. Systems I've studied, all the Ayurveda. I got certified to teach yoga in 2009, but I was told very strongly, this is not for you to be a teacher right now, like to go out and actually teach in classes. This is for you. This is for your journey to evolve with it. And so on my mastery school, I've got, like I talked about Mary Magdalene with Divine Feminine integration. It's a DNA activation and partnering with her. But oh boy, do I have a lot of subjects on there. I've got the pranayama, which is learning the art of breath, because breath is the most immediate tool to connect with soul, to connect with our spirit. And I have the yoga and the Ayurveda. I have many gifted things as well, because I think that's very important. And that's part of the YouTube channel as well, is gifting wisdom, gifting activation for people to run with it and see, wow, this is what my center really feels like, like that breathwork video. Hey, and in 2 to 3 minutes, you can feel all of a sudden a silence that maybe you've only felt a few times. Like starting to help people see there's many different avenues to our life becoming more of a peak experience, where we're calm and we're receptive, but there's a lot of magic and trust in ourselves. So there's the yoga, there's the Ayurveda. I also love sharing the elementals. So there's a beautiful, the healing power of fire, which is a gifted course of a lot of different practices, learning these from different monks and medicine people all over the world, but working with fire, to activate our own fire. And with the Ayurveda, I come at it from an elemental holographic reality, where we each are an amalgam of a different combination or recipe of the elements. We're made of the stars, we're made of the earth. Each of us is a different combination of these. And when we start to bond more intimately with Gaia and how these elements come through, we have a sense of self-intimacy that is so strong, and we become really connected to ourselves. And then we feel confident. A lot of us, confidence is new, right? And speaking up or sharing our wisdom, a lot of initiations, right? The last few years, and to continue. Yeah. So I'm having a hard time remembering what else I offer, but there's a lot of cool stuff on there and a lot more to come. I think this summer I'm going to have a galactic heritage, like how I researched my galactic heritage through my Terran or Earth heritage. I go all over the place because I just love learning and I love sharing. Yes. And it's the more I discover there's so much to know, we don't really know anything, right? Exactly. So I have so much passion to share that, and also how to create your own ministry. I have a course for women, on are you feeling called, to lead? Because I know when I was called to lead, I was scared out of my wits. And that's how the Mary Magdalene course came about, was she came to me to partner with me and learn, here's the Lemurian lineage of the rose of which you are a part. Let's do some womb work, getting into the womb and starting. That's what expanded for me, seeing the body and all these parts of the body as stargates, which was really fascinating, like the throat and the womb, the heart, the higher heart, they're all connected. The more we come into the heart and feel confident with that, it starts to unlock the higher heart. And the more we do that, then all of a sudden, our throat is we're starting to feel safer speaking our truth. And in a way that's with grace and love, it's just easy because it's just who we are, there's nothing that we're trying to prove or come up against anymore, because that's dissolved. We're just here, you know what I mean? But the biggest thing that's really challenging for me is that higher self or universe will show me, you must do this, you must do this. And I really push myself, or my universe does, I should say, with my YouTube channel, because I'm shown to share things and I'm like, oh my God, this is terrifying. But that's my human saying that. And then higher self is like, it's not about you. So I guess I'm being called to share this for those of us in our way shower, or getting ready for leadership, or getting ready to go deeper in our leadership, which I call ministry or way showership. Oh boy, will we be pushed to do things that make our human cringe and so uncomfortable. And last year, I was guided to share a video called The Life Review. And I was sharing how me and my mom, we've been doing a Tai Chi Gong practice, working with a lamasery. Now it's been 6 months. But how that really has unraveled a lot of deep codes. And we're doing a lot of DNA healing, a lot of ancestral healing together. And I was just reflecting on how our family lineage has had every distortion that the human experience could have. And reflecting on that with a sense of reverence and awe and honor. And also being very proud of ourselves that we said yes. We took the gauntlet and we've done it and cleared these things, because what we're doing for ourselves, we're doing for others, right? For humanity. But in that video, I cried, because sometimes you don't know when you're going to talk about things that you're going to cry, and it was like, oh my God, I just cried. And higher self was like, you know what, it's raw and it's vulnerable, and you're showing people how to show up and communicate in a way that's authentic, and you have to do it because it's about others. It's not about you. And it's like, oh my God. And I mean, for weeks, I was just so cringing about it. And yet I had people tell me, I have people, dear friends that are in their 80s, beautiful star elders that are in my life. And one of my dear friends, she was like, Merissa, I haven't been able to crack my heart open my whole life because of what I've been through. And I watched that, and it cracked her open. And now she's like embracing her human relationships with her grandchildren and her daughter. And like, it's removed walls. So our work is really important. And not in an ego way, but meaning that there's this ripple effect, we never know the impact we're going to have when we show up. And the love I received for that video was so beautiful that I was like, okay, I'm not going to crawl in a hole and just like never come out, onto YouTube again, and then I had to do it again. I had to share my health history, and I've been waiting my whole life. And I've been watching all of this stuff go on with the world and health and how it's perceived and what's going on, not said anything. And hearing soon, and I'm like, okay, I don't know how that's going to come out, that I'm going to share my health journey and the power of the mind body, connection. And there's so much more with that. Having back injuries, like when I worked at the grocery store and hurting myself because, you're doing the load and it's a lot of physical labor, which I love physical labor. I find it really fascinating and really empowering to but I would hurt my back. And that also had to do with my own stuff, lower back issues, right? Support and all this. Mm-hmm. And I would have these experiences where I'd be laying in the sun and being shown, like a cobra would come and show me its spine and its vertebrae and be like, look, we never have a kink, and chiropractors will talk about this, like they're trying to get us to be like that, this undulation. And so I was shown how to work with the cobra for healing back injuries. Let it come in and spiral through your spine. And then boop, it's just going to, straighten everything out again, like a rope, like you're just doing this with a rope. So anyway, the more open we are and the more open we are to sharing, I think that's where the medicine is, for everyone, for one another.
Absolutely. And there's so much there because, as beings, we're going through waves of awakening. So a big awakening portal at the beginning is to be seen and to come out. And so that's a huge one. And it seems insurmountable at the time. But then when you've come through that, then there's bringing things into alignment with that. And then as we move on, it's more about coming into a deeper space of purity and being more of that purity. And especially for me, realizing, so that older version of myself wasn't very genuine, and I didn't see it at the time, because that was, now you can see it as a sort of a persona or a facade, but you didn't really feel it was at the time. But then the deeper you come into that purity within yourself, then you can see that separation. So that you were able to be so open and vulnerable there. It's so important. This is showing others that that's the power, because that's the truth of that soul and that communication. And it's maybe giving permission to others to unburden themselves too from any layers or things that they're putting over themselves to try to be something other than what they truly are, maybe. That's so beautiful. And also, our families are like a little microcosm of everything, so it's all beautifully designed, which is incredible. There is something that I wanted to ask you, because you have indigo in your name. So I wanted to just ask a little bit about that. And I know that recently you have felt an affinity with miracles too, and that's a frequency that you've brought into your name as well. So to share a little bit about those frequencies.
Yes, sure. So I always knew I was a star seed. And for whatever reason, my color was always that azure, cerulean, indigo blue. And I knew that was one of my flames, like a holy fire flame that I came in with as a keeper of the flame. That was a frequency I came in with. And I was born in 1987. And I was born, 3 months before the harmonic convergence. So it's the frequency of being, and it does shift because, of course, in I want to say adolescence and young adulthood, it was more of a systems busting from a, like the indigo, like shake it up, rebel, rock and roll music, punk rock. Like I had a mohawk, tattoos, like, seeing through the matrix, right? And knowing that I was here to destroy it. And yet now, because there's a shift where as we grow and expand and our heart gets bigger and the love gets bigger in us, we realize, there's nothing to fight against. It's just a holding. That's how we're really going to do this. It's interesting. So that blue has always been really important. And I have that piece from you, that pendant, that is just so vital. And I wear that a lot. Beautiful blue. And so that's that indigo. It's a frequency of being the indigo children. And that's a huge part of one of the things I came in with.
I'm fascinated with the blue ray and how so many of us are, it activates, we feel a deep resonance with that name, with that vibration, with those frequencies. I've been playing a lot recently, looking at different frequencies and colours of blue and aras, and just trying to tune in a bit more. So what's this and what's this? And then seeing this huge bandwidth. Huge. So you coming to this, the early understanding of the indigo frequency and playing that out as well a little bit, which is important as well, because it's part of our creative power. But then now turning it around fully to see it in a different way.
Yes. And now it's more like sapphire rose, Syrian, the Syrian blue. So we come in with that angst and that fire, which is going to help anchor us here, because it's giving us that courage to stay in the physical experience and to keep busting through these glass ceilings until we reach what we knew was there, that metaphysical reality that we knew is the underlying substratum of all. And yet it felt so far away, right? So there's that angst in the first piece. And then you bring in these other aspects of it. And then you also have the aurora, that blue of the threefold flame, you know, which is like the Christed child, this soft goddess, you know, Mother Water, you know, Mother Mary, these blues. It's very interesting. I mean, Mother Mary has like a soft sky blue all the way to almost a like a cobalt, almost a black blue. Yes. So yeah, it's really interesting.
And it's infinite. This is the amazing thing about this journey. It's just yes. Like it's forever giving, and it's like, oh, but I thought it was this, but then now it's this. So it's continually unfolding for us, which keeps us really excited and involved. And then you had the miracles as well. So how did that come about?
Well, that was part of the activation that I had to kind of start to embody before I could do that health, like my health journey, like the body, the final frontier video, which was, you know, all of my journey aside and like multiple, you know, near-death experiences and different things I needed to like really catalyze being here, like kind of get me on track, if you will. All of us are miracles. If we look at the atomic, like what's going on at the cellular level, like when an ovum is, you know, is fertilized, it looks like the birth of supernovas. So it's all, I mean, there's no difference. And we are all miracles. The fact that, you know, these trillions of cells came together just right for you to be you and for me to be me, and for each of us to have our own fingerprints. I mean, really, you know, yeah, it starts to get really mind blowing. You know, we're getting quantum with that. So that alone is true. And then for me, I think I had to have those experiences to really be able to fully accept that, the health experiences, and also my daughter. Because when I had my kidney disorder, I had to take oral chemotherapy afterwards until I went into remission. And they told me, oh, you may not be able to conceive. And I didn't even let that into my field. It just, I was like, nope. Like, and I'm grateful because I've always been a seer. So when I was little, I was like 7, I had these visions of me and this little girl, and it was me and this little girl in the world. And I knew that was my daughter. So I had already seen her in a way. So when the doctor said that, you know, I was like, you know, I didn't let it come in, but I still look at my daughter as a miracle because her biological father had a lot of childhood illnesses too. He had like serious like cancers as a baby and like all these things. He was a starseed too. So she's a miracle because she's the most perfect health, you know, and is here, you know. And so that's where I was like, okay, I think it's time to start owning the miracles piece. And it's still a big one. I still have to like fully come out and put it everywhere. I didn't put it on the video thing today. I was like, oh, that's okay. But yeah, I think it's important to start to, it's almost like when we're building our names, they become a song of a string of names. You know, we start to get many names. I know I have many names from different cultures and, you know, different tribes I've been with and things like that. So it's part of our song.
Yes, and there's two things there. I was on a video call recently, and I loved it because there were so many people there, and they all had their vibrational names. Mm-hmm. And I was the only one with my sort of human name, let's say. Okay. All right. And I just found it so beautiful. Some of them were maybe golden eagle or majestic angel or whatever, but it was just so lovely that people are really resonating now with, as we're changing frequencies, we're going to be resonating with new names or sounds or colors or frequencies, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And for you to be able to own that and to say it is very powerful too. It's really beautiful. And you reminded me, because you were speaking about your fingertips, you reminded me about the patterns and an experience that you had when you saw your fingerprint and that it moved, or you could see the coding in it. Do you mind sharing that with us?
I highly recommend for anyone who hasn't really played with finger paints for a while, or maybe even cool ink, like get some gold or silver ink from like Joann's, a craft store, and look at your fingerprints, like do your full hand each side, because boy, you're going to see a lot in there. You can see binary. There's a lot. It's fascinating. And so I had an activation with that getting fingerprints done, because we were originally in 2020, we thought we were going to go to Ecuador. And then that ended up not being aligned. So it didn't work. That timeline collapsed. But in a way, I think part of that experience was for me to just see them on that live scan, this kind of digital, because they were blown up, you know, they're really blown up big in front of my face. You could really see it. And I was just like, wow, like that's fascinating. And yeah, you see a lot in there. So I highly recommend it. Or another thing you can do is just color them with a felt tip pen, you know, take a pretty color and then color your fingertip and maybe rub it off a little bit and then look at the lines, because it's going to tell you a lot of, and same thing with the palms of the hands. You know, a lot of us have the M and the A in our palms, you know, for Mu and Atlantis. And I have both of those. So it's like, and it brings us back to the yoga again, and like embodiment practices, like even martial arts or the Tai Chi Gong, like when we do this, we're unifying, you know, these polarities within the body of the magnetics. And that is so many other things. So it's just can support the embodiment process of starting to see like how we are like a snowflake too. That's part of that miracles thing, is starting to expand. What does it really mean to be a soul in a body at this time, accessing so much and starting to explore the technology of the body, of the light body, and so much more. It's so much fun. It's funny.
So much fun.
It just cracks me up, because as a like a teen and a young adult, like, so I always joke around. I say, well, I did things early and backwards. So I had a very expedited, like, here, you're going to have all this illness, then you're going to get into drugs really young, and you're going to get into all these different, you know, distorted things that we have to go through in our angst and our pain and our, you know, feeling cut off from God when we're in the body, right? Then we realize, oh, that's not really true. I'm an individuation, you know, and coming into these higher frequencies of being. But yeah, I always joke around, like I did everything, you know, backwards and upside down, but it was so I could get here now to share the codes with everybody.
Exactly.
You know, so we can do this.
Exactly. And you've recently, last year, moved to Washington.
Yes.
So you're based there now, and the imagery and the images that you share from your new life there, out in nature, connecting again on a deeper level, you're playing in some of the most exquisite frequencies, and you're finding them there because you're finding them from inside of you. I think it's so beautiful. I mean, the colors and the frequencies that come out of the images are just beyond. And you're playing in some of my favorite frequencies, which are the Lemurian frequencies. Oh, look.
I bought a lot of some of Lois's beautiful sets, her Lemurian sets, for exactly this. They were like, we're going to the Olympic rainforest. You know, and I was like, okay, you know, so here they are. They love being here.
And you've been able to connect again on a deeper level with those Lemurian frequencies inside and seeing the fairy realms again. And you've had some exquisite experiences there.
Yeah. I want to share this. I have an activation on my YouTube channel that came through. So I was here for about a month and just really struggling with rooting in, so I want to share this too. I think this is important. This is a discovery that I made a few days ago. I've been here 6 months now. Was in California for almost 24 years. And before that, the Big Island for almost 12. And I realized that, you know, we may be guided to shift, you know, and many places are temporary. But I was finding a fear of putting my root down into Gaia here, because there are many frequency bands of consciousness, right, that I don't resonate with, you know, and so I just wanted to share that, you know what, we can go deeper. We can go under, just a reminder, because my root chakra got really sphinctered up for a little while. Like, well, I don't really, there's no one really to connect with here, but I love the nature so much. And what happened was the mycelium came to me. I was having it was a huge activation I had in the forest here, a huge Lemurian activation that I hadn't felt since I was a child in Hawaii. And it brought up the grief of when I had to leave Hawaii, because I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave those frequencies. You know, it's hard to go into more of a, could say Babylon is kind of how parts of California felt for me. So the mycelium came, and the mycelium are a fungal network of Gaia's consciousness. They're their own individuated consciousness, but they have the most incredible energy. They're like elders. They're very timeless. They could be probably millions of years old, but they're in the ground, and they're connected to the tree networks. But if you could imagine the original internet being these, if you imagine the way that the synapses look in the brain, the neurons firing and these tendrils, and the information is floating around the globe, these electrical pulses, that's the mycelial network. And they showed me, I mean, their energy is so, I'm just feeling them again to share them with you guys. They're like elders that are so ancient and so wise, and they have a great sense of humor. They think slowly. Their energy is very present. It's like kind of like a I want to say like a Tai Chi master.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're funny and they're very present though. But they showed me how the mycelium consciousness has known us not only everywhere we have been on the planet, but everywhere we have been in our consciousness as we are growing, developing, experiencing, purging, expanding, contracting, all of it. And they have been holding us the whole time, and with complete love, and there's no judgment. They hold us, they watch us evolve, you know, and they're under our feet everywhere we are on this planet. I mean, it just cracked me open, and I cried so hard because it was such a beautiful, loving holding. So there's another emanation of Gaia. So I know that's part of coming here, is to connect more deeply with the trees, and then the mycelial network. That's the original internet, the original web, crystalline consciousness, you know, right beneath our feet. I mean, oh my gosh, you know.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And I can feel it, and I can see them. And because I come from Wales, and it's quite, it rains a lot in Wales. So there's lots of fungi and all sorts of mossy creations there in the nature. And I can see what you're speaking about there. So that's incredible. And to close, let's bring you to this energetic year, to 2022, and the energies that you would like to share, or any messages that you have felt, or what you have experienced or seen to share.
I'd love to. Yeah. Okay, the codes are so big for this year. I still haven't been able to write them. But if I could, it came a little bit more succinctly the other night. I was able to share it in our community. It's all about the heart. This is the year of the heart, 2022. And it's a crystalline, it's the Christos frequencies, it's Sophia Christ. And it's all things heart. So we're going to, we're going to tunnel in, and we're going to continue to release distortions, right? And the heart's going to expand bigger than we ever knew. And like Lisa Transcendence Brown talks about, we become a walking heart chakra. The experience I had on the 222 was unbelievable. And I know we're ramping up. I can feel it. We're ramping up for the next, the 22nd of the month as well. But it's about the heart and everything that's in there. It's the portal to everything. It holds everything. It holds all of our distortion for us when we're ready to witness one piece at a time, integrating, loving into wholeness, one piece at a time. It could be a lot of soul retrieval, child stuff, the inner Christ child coming forth, so that we can all embody more of our threefold flame, the trinitized beingness, Heavenly Father, Cosmic Mother, and the child, that creator, the creation, so we are the being coming, we are becoming the whole time. And that's what I received, was this year is really about the heart, and seeing, and the lions come, the Lyrans are very much here for this. And Mother Mary came in to say, I'm here all year for everybody, to hold us, as we continue to expand and come more into our loving hearts, and sharing vulnerably, becoming more vulnerable, becoming more emotional in the way that is the most empowering we've ever had. Because we're seeing a lot of things around the world that are opening our hearts and unifying us as a people. So we're becoming the global village again, the crystalline global village. So yeah, all about the heart and heart health. And it's just being really brave, and just going in and knowing that you have the support to do it. We wouldn't be here. I come to this over and over again when I'm like, oh my gosh, I think this one's just going to take me out, because it starts to get really deep and really big. And I'm like, I don't know if my body can do it, and then I'm shown over and over again, you wouldn't come if you couldn't. And this is important for people to know, is that for every one of us that got a body, there were hundreds of thousands in line that didn't get it. So many want to be here for this. And we have to remember, to look at things from the whole picture. It's very exciting. So a lot of people, I think, are going to come into discovering more about themselves and why they're here and what really lights them up.
This is
and how we're going to build.
This is it. And it's so funny because on soul level, I'm sure we were first in the queue. I want to come.
Yeah.
But we forget that. No, what? Oh. And also I had this, it's so simple, but it was just like this, just to show how divinely orchestrated everything is. So the 222, yeah, of course it's all divinely orchestrated. We knew we would reach as a collective this time, and that there was a group that would be ready to begin the building and to do work from the foundations up to create this new level of consciousness, that it was going to be something that was more solid as a collective, because there are individuals that have achieved this before us, but now this is calling for more of a huge foundation to be created, in a sense. And then just to know, well, it's the 2022 year. Of course, there's going to be these builder codes coming in. It's all perfectly designed from beyond. The ancients knew that this was going to be the time. And so it's all, in a sense, already created and destined. And we are just in the flow and playing it out.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Just trusting, just keep listening. And that was something that a yoga teacher that I really appreciate so much, she had shared at the end of the year, deep listening. And she was referencing the body and the breath. And I took that as a metaphor for everything, is just the deep listening, so doing whatever we can to have more quiet within so that we can listen to the wisdom and the guidance, because it's always there. And, like I've shared, it will push us sometimes to do things that are uncomfortable or really feel really bold, but you can feel that there's a purity there. So it is aligned, and that's just it, is this deep listening, deep loving.
Merissa, it's been such a joy. Thank you so much for sharing your heart with us. It's been beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.